going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Wednesday, June 8th, 2023. I'm one of your hosts, Sean Murphy, alongside one of my guys, Troy Sergey. Troy, good to see you as always, my guy.
Good to see you, Sean. We got an NBA Finals right now, 1-1 split. It's going to be a good finals. But Sean, who won the Eastern Conference this year?
Dude, don't worry. I'm gonna give you guys enough time later to give me crap for that. Oh my gosh. Another guy here, Jeff Iafrady. Jeff, so James, we had this whole conversation last week about how I had this emphatic argument that there is no way that the Boston Celtics are screwing this up and losing game 7. And I went on this impassionate rant, and these guys were both like, I don't know. I think Miami's going to do it. And I was like, you guys are crazy. There's no way after game 6 that could happen. And
I was with you. I didn't go on an impassioned speech. I kept it kind of quiet, but I definitely thought they were going to win.
Yeah, and sure enough, here we are. So Jeff, I'm glad. I'm sure you're glad to see me today.
You know, I'm not going to kill you too much, Sean. I'm going to give you some leeway here. We got a special guest, so I'm excited. I feel like we're slowly piecing this puzzle together this offseason for the Pistons, and with James's help, he's going to help us do even more. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. Well, I alluded to him a little bit already, but the fourth one with us today is, for my money, one of the best beat writers in the NBA. He is of The Athletic. He is the on-again, off-again man who wears the cardigan, as my man Motown Noah likes to affectionately put it. My guy, James Edwards III. James, thank you so much for coming on, man. It is really good to see you. This has been a crazy summer for you, man. How you feeling?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you having me on. I don't know where do I rank amongst visiting guests? Like, have I been on the most?
Oh, you're easily first. Like the amount of times that you've come on already. Like you're at number one.
Oh, well, yeah. I appreciate. I didn't know if Ashton had me beat or anything, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. No, hey, like we appreciate you taking the time. And I mean, dude, you just last week broke one of the biggest stories of your career. It'd be up there, right? If you were to do a Mount Rushmore, that's top 5 at least, right?
I mean, I would have to. Yeah, I guess breaking like a head coach is up there. That's not. It usually goes to the national guys. So that would be up there. I think I beat Woj on Weaver's hiring by like 30 seconds.
That's crazy.
That's a lot to Woj. 30 seconds is a lot.
Yeah. Or maybe he beat me by 30 seconds. I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look. Yeah, no, it's definitely it's certainly up there. I say it all the time. Just kind of goes to the work you put in all year round leads to moments like that. So
yeah,
cool to see it pay off. But yeah, the off season's been weird. I wouldn't say it's been busy. It's been kind of just a lot of waiting around, and you don't want to go too off the grid because you don't know. I had an idea of when things were happening and weren't happening. So
right.
I was able to make sure, like, personally, I wasn't too far over here or locked in on my computer when I didn't need to be. So, but certainly you got an inkling that something was going down last week. And because of all the chilling that I did, I had to make sure I took advantage of that opportunity when it presented itself.
Yeah, 100%. I'm pretty sure, like, the day that you said that, that things kind of started to happen on your end was like one of the days where people were going, "What the hell is happening?" on Twitter. And
that's every day.
And you would just kind of have to periodically go, "Things are happening. Slow down. I'll like you'll know eventually." But obviously, it was about almost 2 months. I believe April 7th was the day that Dwayne Casey announced he was stepping into the front office. So I think
June 9th would be whenever the last day of the last regular season game was. I think it's June 7th or June 9th would be 2 months.
Yeah. Yep. So we're coming up to about 2 months. Yeah. So obviously, other teams, pulled the trigger a bit quicker. Their process was a bit different than how the Pistons did things, with their situation. When ultimately, they kind of did come to that conclusion that that it was Monty, that was their guy, that was who they wanted to go for. How much of that was a Tom Gores thing? How much of that was a front office thing? Because I know in your reporting, Tom initially brought his name back up the second time around. What did that look like?
Yeah. Before I go there, kind of just to go back to what you said about people just wondering what's going on, but
Yeah,
I mean, they're a pretty transparent group, and even the stuff that they say like on record and on camera is tends to be like fairly true. They told everybody at during the end of season press conferences that they weren't in a rush, and that they were going to take their time. At the end of the day, when they hired Monty, it was only the end of May. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even
yeah,
officially summer yet. So it was very interesting seeing kind of the anxiety everybody had. And I think that was more so with the names involved than it was the timeline.
right,
Maybe you guys can speak to that better, but yeah, it was certainly interesting. But in terms of Monty, yeah, I think everybody in the front office liked him. Obviously, there were relationships there. I know obviously him and Troy is one. I'm sure him and Arn have one, just from both of those guys being in the league for a while. I mean, the record over the last 3 years speaks for itself. What he did with Phoenix is very similar to what the position Detroit is in now, in comparison to when he took over in Phoenix. They see him as a guy that can not only get them more competitive, but transition them into that next phase of regularly being competitive. So, yeah, I think everybody was on board. I think there was probably hesitation because it didn't appear that some thought that they could get Monty. But when they originally reached out just to like check the temperature after he was fired, there was never like an offer put in front of him. It was just very like, hey, would you talk to us? Are you gonna coach next year? And then it was kind of then when Gores mentioned, what about Monty, that they actually put like a formal, what we now know as a Godfather offer in front of him.
right. Yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, it was a little bit. Troy helped seal the deal, obviously. Arn helped like it was a group effort, but it certainly was. I think that is right there the benefit of taking your time, right? Like everybody, if you would have asked when Dwayne announced he was going to step down, if you would have pulled the fan base and asked them when would you like to have a coach by, they would probably say at the latest a month. And then in that case, they'd miss out on Monty Williams. So
yeah.
another lesson in patience from the Pistons organization, I would say.
Yeah, 100%. And, just to follow up on that point specifically, just because, with the fact that, it was widely reported, during the process that the Pistons initially made an offer to Monty that he had refused, which, in your reporting, once he accepted the job, you that was not true. Right. But,
I was
I know,
told that was not true. Yeah, I mean,
right,
one of us could have been lied to, but
right.
I certainly was told that was not true by somebody uh, yeah, I was told that was not true. Yes.
By someone you trust, I would imagine. That
Yes.
makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
Right. I know Brian I know one of the national pundits, Brian Windhorst, a guy I respect a lot. He knows more about basketball on his pinky toe than I'll probably know in my entire life. But, his reporting on the situation on the Hoop Collective and other mediums was essentially that Monty initially didn't want the job, but the money became too good to pass up on, and it got to a certain point where you can't say no. Was essentially, what Brian inferred. Um, how much, kind of from what you can tell, because, kind of from the sense that I've gotten, is that, from your reporting and from Sham's reporting and from the stuff that you guys have corroborated on, it seems to me that this was more than a basketball. I mean, that this was more than a money decision, that this was also about the relationships and other factors involved. What do you think? How much do you think was the offer, like the Godfather offer, but also how much do you think Monty just believes in the situation as well?
I mean, that's tough to answer. I would
Right.
say I don't even know if we would get a truthful answer from him, but I
Of
would
course.
say of course the money was a big reason why. I
Right.
would go scrub sidewalks for a living if they were going to pay me $10 million a year to do it.
Right.
Not comparing the Pistons to scrubbing sidewalks, but you know what I mean? Money,
Right.
money talks. Money, you'll do a lot of things for a lot of money. And I think that the opportunity to be the highest paid coach, to have somebody recognize what I'm sure he sees as his worth, is enticing. The way that the organization went about it, kind of the perks that are set up for him, his relationship with Troy, his belief in Troy, like that all plays a part in it. But I feel like I would be disingenuous if I sat here and said that like the money wasn't the biggest part. But like if
Right.
people think that means he doesn't want to be here, like that's absurd. Like we would all we all do what we do. We love something, but we also like to get paid for it. So I don't think what Windhorst was saying was necessarily like wrong. I would say that if Monty didn't want to coach, he didn't have to,
Right.
obviously. And there were other options that he could have taken, and Detroit made it very hard for him to say no. So I don't know. To me, it just sounds like business. It
Right.
sounds like regular business that you can transition to any profession. So I'm sure some people will think as the season goes on, he doesn't really want to be here. He's just here for the money. It's like, I mean, you have your opinion to think that, but at the end of the day, he'd rather be known as the guy who turned the Pistons around than the guy who didn't. And he doesn't want blemishes on his coaching track. Like, he's going to do the best job he can.
Right.
Sometimes money talks, and it opens your eyes to a situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, Troy, if you guys want to ask a question, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to bring up the on the court stuff with Cade and Jaden for Monty, because I think we can all agree, watching Monty wherever he coached, he's always had success with guards, whether he played with, Chris Paul, he was alongside Russell Westbrook, Devin Booker. You see him flourish now with his philosophy, that 0.5 offense. Because listen, if we think the Pistons can get to where we think they can get to, a lot of it depends on Ivy and Cunningham. How do you, in your opinion, that 0.5 offense, his philosophy, how is it going to benefit Cade and Ivy? And does that speed up the process for those two this season to be able to gel together? Because it will be their first full season on the court.
Yeah, I'm curious to find out. I've seen a lot of talk about like the 0.5 offense, and just to give background, that's something they obviously executed it very well in Phoenix, and that's
right.
There's something that goes to that. But Detroit maybe still has, I haven't been in the practice gym in a while, a big sign that literally says 0.5 mentality. It's been there since Casey's been there, with everything that comes with that. So it's something that the Pistons have tried to implement, and obviously has not gone successfully regularly. So at least for Cade and Jaden, it's not something that they'll be like unfamiliar with. It's something that Casey has talked about ad nauseum with that group. It's something that their principles were rested on, but necessarily the execution wasn't there. So there's familiarity there. I think Monty does a good job of the guys who need to have the ball in pick and roll, run a lot of pick and rolls. It's not like, let's just put this guy that probably shouldn't be in a pick and roll in a pick and roll. Like, those guys that need to have the ball in those situations do, and he'll spam those. So he has two guys that are good at it. And I also think Cade is kind of very similar to CP3 and Devin in a way, where they love the mid-range, right? And it's something that wasn't necessarily frowned upon by Monty, because those two were elite at it. And the small sample size we have from Cade is he's trending toward that way too, from the mid-range. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it works. I think the biggest question is just how do Cade and Jaden work together? And we won't be able to answer that. We can all fantasize and think of this, or look at instance from when they did, in the brief times that they did play together, like, okay, this is how it works. But Jaden's not that same player. Cade might not be the same player. He's definitely not the same person physically. So it'll be interesting to see. But I definitely think Monty has a great offensive mind. The philosophy he's did and they executed well in Phoenix was beautiful at times, and it was very efficient and got the job done. It's just now a matter of getting the young guys to buy in and getting the young guys to not, I don't want to say buy in. Well, yeah, definitely to buy in, but also kind of understand what all that entails. And you got to put egos aside. Not saying that there are egos on that team, but you have to put egos aside to really execute that offense at a high level.
Yeah, absolutely. And go ahead, Troy.
No, I was just going to ask him, looking at some of the young guys that we had on the team last year who we've seen able to flourish, making big steps in their careers. We looked at a little bit of Wiseman, definitely Duren coming on strong in a rookie year, Ivy, obviously Cade, only about half the year. I guess in this upcoming season, 2023, 2024, which of those guys, those younger core, do you expect to make the massive leap, either in year 3, I guess, if you're Cade, or year 4, I guess, if you're Wiseman, or year 2, if you're Ivy or Duren, but who's going to make the biggest jump next season?
I mean, I think the natural answer is Cade, just because, I mean, it's essentially year 2 for him, but he still has like 3 years of experience. He's had a full year to work on his body, and you guys have seen the photos. It looks, in person, it's way more noticeable. Putting in a lot of work on his shot. Like, I think for this to work, and I've said this, whether they got Wembanyama or not, like, Cade is the engine. Like, he
100%.
has the potential to be really, really good. I think he will be really, really good, but he's not there yet. And he shows flashes regularly, but he just hasn't played enough. So I think he'll get there. I think you'll start to see it consistently at some point this season. And I just think his offense, and I know how much Monty, I've heard through the grapevine, Monty's a big fan of Cade. He would say stuff even when the Pistons and Suns would play. He's a big Cade fan, and I think that's going to be his bread and butter once the season starts. Is Cade Cunningham in the pick and roll?
100%. I also can imagine just, we all know what happened with the DeAndre Ayton situation. I think Isaiah Stewart is probably going to be the breath of fresh air for Monty Williams. But I'm also interested as well, in how Steven Silas could potentially change the equation as well, and like what he could maybe bring on the offensive end too. I know Kevin Young was someone reportedly, like once Monty was brought on, that was someone that they were like aggressively going towards and like bringing into his staff. And once that didn't happen, like in the Silas news broke, obviously I was surprised, because even though it wasn't like, there wasn't like any like concrete reporting, there was images of Silas on the bench in Boston, like during the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, it was kind of heavily speculated that he might be a top assistant there next season. Do you, like, from your end, do you know, like, did Detroit do anything to like lure him from a specific situation? Was that a conversation that started pretty quickly once it was apparent that Kevin Young was staying in Phoenix? Do you know anything about how that went down?
To be honest, I don't.
That's totally okay.
I'm sure we'll ask Monty at his press conference about that, because I know that it was on him he's picking his entire staff. So,
okay.
And I mean, maybe there's relationships there with Troy, and maybe Troy recommends somebody or whatever. But I know Monty's picking his staff. And yeah, I would assume that they're very close. I don't know that. But there's obviously the video. I mean, Monty could just be a good dude. Maybe they're not close, but the video of Silas coaching the first game right after his father passed, and how Monty was consoling him. So I don't think you console somebody like that unless you have a relationship. Like, there's a way to console somebody out of the respect because they're in your profession, but that seemed very personal. So I would imagine that there's something there, but I don't know that for 100% certainty.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, it certainly seems like there was a bit of a relationship there, to your point. It didn't seem like they weren't unfamiliar with each other. in that moment whatsoever. So I guess kind of with that investment in the coaching staff, a lot of the natural discussion, like it feels very similar to, it's kind of like that cycle each and every summer. It's kind of like similar to the Lions every year, where it's like after the draft, we think we're going to the Super Bowl, and the first game happens, and it's kind of like the same cycle it goes every year. It's
Yeah.
like after the lottery, it was the Pistons are chalked, their future screwed. Now that we have Monty, it's, oh, we're all the way back, play in, baby, let's go. It's kind of like the fun wave of how people talk about things, right?
Yeah.
It and naturally, I mean, when you get the winningest coach in the league since 2021, it can be natural to start to let your expectations run wild. But with that being said, how do you think this changes the expectations internally? Because reality of it is, Monty signed an 8-year contract, with 6 of them guaranteed. It seems like on Detroit's end, it seems like they're pretty patient.
Yes. Yeah. I've gotten asked that question a lot. Like, how does hiring Monty, does it expedite any of this? And I don't see it.
Right.
Now, whether or not they hired Monty, their goal was to be in play-in contention next year. Like, they have no aspirations of holding their breath on lottery night anymore. They wanted to get better. Monty increases their chances of getting better, I would say. In comparison, or I shouldn't say that. I don't know how Kevin Ollie or Charles Lee would have done in this position. But on paper, Monty increases their chances, right? And I think that's just the biggest thing. At the end of the day, you got to have good players. Mark Dagnall is a great coach in OKC, but be honest, they're not doing what they did if Shea isn't a top 10 player this past season, right? At the end of the day, you need your players to develop. You need your players to get better. You need your players to take that step. Not every season's linear progression, but you need to feel good about the direction it's going. And I think they're very interested in building a healthy organization from top to bottom. And to do that, you need to draft well and keep your draft picks, get your assets, build them up. And if you need to execute on a trade, you execute on a trade. But it's very important to have several young players who other teams want. And I think the Pistons, will they try to add a veteran? Of course, I think so. I think that's no secret, but I don't think it's going to be at the expense of trading any of their young guys or trying to make a win now move. I just think they hope that they do an OKC situation where they're in the race because their young guys got better.
Right.
And that's what any non-massive market should be doing. That's the blueprint. Now, with that said, I know I've been saying for years, like, their hope is to turn a corner this past season, and it is their hope. But that turn the corner is like be in the contention for play-in and don't look back from there. That's turning the corner. That's knowing that what you have can go and there's potential there. They spent last year still figuring out like who's good and who's not, right? Like that.
Yeah.
They were still very much in talent evaluation mode. So I think this year, I think they're pretty comfortable with who they have and believe in who they have. And now it's about getting better as a unit. And Cade's health will be of the utmost importance in that.
Yeah. I think it's going to be important for them too, especially with the new collective bargaining agreement, to not rush into getting a ton of like really expensive guys on their team and being 100% confident that of who they want to build around going forward. Because with the tax aprons that are going to exist now, like, it can seriously cap your team if you're not being responsible with your finances. So I think to your point there, like there's no reason to rush it on any front. But
Right.
Jeff, go ahead. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to, now that we're kind of starting to talk about a little more of the offseason and just free agency in general, James, I have a question because you did collab in an article today. Which NBA teams are positioned to trade for a star? Let's draft them. And coming in at number 9, the Detroit Pistons. So I had to bring it up. But what kind of summer, and I'm not saying, to play Nostradamus and predict what's going to happen, but in your eyes, do you see this being more of an aggressive pursuit of somebody via trade, or are you are the Pistons most likely going to just hold out? Maybe they can't get the guy they're looking for. I know Jaylen Brown's been, I've seen Pistons Twitter explode over that last couple months, but just in general, is it a Cam Johnson, Jeremy Grant, Grant Williams, these types of players, or is it you think it might be go get the big fish via trade? How busy you expect the Pistons, or how aggressive should they be this summer?
Yeah, I don't expect the big swing for the fences trade this summer. And by like big swing for the fences, I mean like one of, if not both of Jaden and Ivy are involved. You know what I mean? Like you're really emptying the clip. No pun intended. That's a Troy Weaver quote, right?
Yeah.
Emptying the clip. Wasn't Rod going to make T-shirts or something like that? I forgot what it was.
That
was like,
Rod has multiple T-shirts that he has on the back burner, man. He's got to start writing stuff. He's got, he's got
dad,
too much.
Man.
He's a hustler. He's a
100%.
He's a dad hustler. Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
What a legend, man.
Rod. I actually saw him last week. I ran into him randomly. Shout out to Rod.
Legend.
We love Rod here.
No, he's a good dude. Where was that? Oh, yeah, I don't think that comes this summer. I think that they try to listen. I think they know right now if they have a real chance at bringing Jeremy Grant back. Surprise the NBA talks before free agency. I think they know. Whether or not, I don't know. I'm not like playing dumb up here. I honestly don't know. I know that they had interest in entertaining the idea of bringing him back. Cam Johnson's a little more tricky because I'm sure they'll throw an offer out there just to see. But then once you get past those two, you're starting to look at role players, and I'm not necessarily sure that it's not like a bad thing. Like I've mentioned Torrey Craig before. Like I don't know. Optically, I could see how that's tough for fans to really digest. If you just bring in like a couple role players, but again, the goal is for Cade and Ivy to be those guys, right? And the success is going to hinge on that. So I think there's several ways to go about it. I wouldn't be surprised if they do a trade. Like there's part of me that thinks Bojan won't start the season in Detroit, but I don't know that. Like I just have a feeling. Like I could see them trying to, like he's mentioned, he wants a 3-and-D wing. Bojan has, and I say that because Bojan has interest all around the league.
Yep.
So like that, like I could see something like that, but I just don't see like them doing a deal to bring in, I don't know, where people want to put Jaylen Brown now in the tier listings of players after what we just saw, but
yeah,
top 25 players. I don't foresee that this summer. But you never know. I didn't foresee the Blake trade happening either. So
none of us did.
Yeah. You never know.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting, and it's a different team than two. I like when they do ultimately trade for a star, because it's like, let's be honest, like, like when you do have the young team, every team does initially have their push their chips in the middle of the table move. Like it's interesting to see who it will be, because it's going to be it's a very different NBA even today than it was even when they traded for Blake a couple years ago. It's interesting.
Yeah, but there's also, it is interesting, right? Because the Nuggets never did that. They let it build organically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then they filled in the margins with excellent role players who just all happened to play for the Pistons when they didn't have stars. So that's rough, but then you look at Miami. Of course, they bring in Jimmy Butler, but Bam is homegrown. Hero hasn't played, but he's homegrown. Duncan Robinson's homegrown. I mean, you can count. Would you count Gabe Vincent as homegrown? So then you look at Boston, and of course, the Celtics situation was different, but
right.
Tatum and Brown were homegrown. Marcus Smart is homegrown. Robert Williams is homegrown. Lakers are a different beast, obviously, because it's LA. But then you look at the teams who have had kind of the most successful runs the last decade. The Raptors homegrown. The Thunder, sans 2 seasons, were homegrown pretty much, or they were able to get guys because of their homegrown talent. So
right.
I just think that's the best way to build a team.
For sure.
And that's why when I say like the Pistons are finally doing it the right way, And I understand the frustration where it's like fans are like, I don't care who's doing it the right way or the wrong way. We've gone whatever X years without a playoff win. And I'm like, I understand that. And it's hard to break it into segments. But at the end of the day, for all but the last 3 of those years, those teams were trying to win and were just bad.
Yep.
Right. Troy and Ed Stefanski, those guys came in and said, okay, we're starting from the bottom. And like that's building it the right way. And I understand, like I said, the lack of the franchise's overall success doesn't necessarily allow great grace to whoever's in charge now. But I always try to tell my friends who are Pistons fans, like, it could be a lot worse. You know how many teams don't get the number 1 pick that quickly? 5 all rookies. And again, all rookie doesn't mean anything, but 5 all rookies, 3 of which were picked after 12. It could be a lot worse. So yeah. I don't know if that makes people feel better, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we try to, like, point back all the time because, it's not that long ago that the Pistons lost by, a friend brought up yesterday to when we lost by like over 40 to the Washington Wizards a couple of years ago when we were in the middle of the, Reggie Jackson, Andre Drummond years, or we were trying to push for the playoffs or whatever that even was, right? It's one thing to have something at its bare bones and to try to actually build something that's long-term sustainable than it is. We got to just figure out how to get to the playoffs this year. We'll figure it out. And we're going to just piece it together year by year and we'll get there. I promise we'll get there.
Right. That's tough to do. That's very tough to do. So yeah, it's interesting, but I just think that building it with the youth at the forefront is the best way to go. And Dwayne said it all the time, and it obviously showed true. It's not always going to be pretty, but one day it will be. It's just a matter of how long. And that's another thing I always kind of consider too is fans are like, all right, if they don't start winning, I'm not going to games. I'm not doing this. I'm done with this team, right? But the moment the team's good again, they'll be back.
Of course,
always.
So that's why Troy can live by his patience and making sure he feels in his heart he's building it the right way. Because, all right, yeah, maybe they won't come this year, but as soon as we're in the playoffs, that place will be packed. So I've always fans always threaten that, but I've been a sports fan. Most of my teams suck, but I'm always back. You know what I mean? So just how the game goes.
And it's not hard. And then when all of a sudden one of those players that they're complaining about makes an awesome windmill jam, you refresh Twitter. It doesn't take long. You see them hyped and back around again. It's the high and lows of the sports fan. But
right.
Troy, what you got, my guy?
Yeah. So without giving names, I'm going to shift to the draft here. But I guess, is there one or two guys that Monty Williams and Troy Weaver and the rest of the staff have their eyes on, or are they still, kind of looking at the big picture of who's going to be available at 5, or are they really hoping one or two guys is available at 5? What's draft room talk looking like?
I'm a budding cardigan listener, so I know from the end of today's episode.
You stay to the end. Thank you.
I got you, fam.
Yeah, I definitely think Troy has guys he likes. I think ultimately, they would love if there's no way Scoot falls to 5, but I still think there's a non-zero chance that Brandon does, and they would love that very much. But outside of that, I think Jarace Walker, Jarace, I need to figure out how to say that. Cam Whitmore, Thompson twins, Taylor Hendricks. I think if they stay at 5, one of those will be the pick. I don't know about Hendricks at 5, but I definitely think there is interest there. I believe Walker, Whitmore, and Hendricks are working out soon. What's today? Tuesday?
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe this week, maybe next week. And the Thompson twins were in town last week. So I'm sure there'll be more. I'm sure there has been more. Those are just the names that have popped up on my radar. But I think those are the names. Well, I think one of those, if they stay at 5, one of those 5 will be a Piston, I think.
Do you think, yeah, and it's interesting because, it's obviously whatever they were going to do was going to be contingent on which pick they get, and, it's kind of the discussion of, like we've talked about this team before in the lottery of, is this team in a position where, do they still draft for the best player available? Do they draft for fit? Like kind of the balance of, of with that within that. And, and it's even the question of, is there a clear best player available at 5, right? Because, with guys like Walker, Whitmore, and the Thompson twins, I think, me personally, it seems like Walker might be the like most ready to go NBA player right now, like kind of like solid, kind of similar to Keegan Murray last year, where you're getting a very solid NBA player out of the box, whereas with the other guys there could potentially be a higher ceiling. But like what do you think is kind of the balance there between fit and upside?
Yeah, no, I would agree with what you said. I'm always in the camp of, if you were the worst team in basketball or one of them, you should never pick for fit.
Right.
That's just how we all think Cade is going to be him one day, right? But he ain't him yet, and you never know what could happen. So you need to try to get as many bites at the apple as you can. I have little doubt that Cade could be a top 20 player in this league, but like I said, he's played one season. I don't even know if he's played a full 82 yet. So in 2 years. So you gotta wait and see. And you can't bank on, it's just tough to bank on that. Right. So yeah, part of you wants to like, okay, I think this guy's going to be the best player 15 years, 10 years, 7 years, 5 years down the line. But then there's also like, I don't like Amen Thompson with Jaden and Cade. Like I don't know. I mean, maybe Cade plays more off the ball, but then I think you're losing what makes Cade. Like I want him running my offense, and Amen can't shoot. But it's also like there's a world where he's the best player, and if you tell me he's the best player in the draft 10 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised. So it's tough, right? Like I think this year I would maybe factor in fit a little bit more than I usually would. But I can't blame them if they have high hopes for a guy, and it maybe is a little funky. It's maybe worth the gamble. We won't see that until maybe a few years down the line, but that's what makes these GM jobs so hard.
Right. Now, obviously, this isn't beat writer James, but if you were betting, like if you were like just gut feeling, because I've just been kind of making the joke future Piston Jarris Walker, because I just don't see a world where we get past draft night and if we don't trade the pick. Like I like Cam Whitmore. I like what the Thompson twins have to offer. And like especially like on the upside side of things, I personally wouldn't draft Amen, but that's just me. I personally just have a very hard time seeing them pass up on a guy like Walker. When you look at like when we speculate or look at the past of like what is a Troy Weaver guy, kind of like how Monty Williams was how they said Monty Williams was the template of what they were looking for at the coaching position. It's like if you were to like draw a Troy Weaver guy, it feels like Jarris Walker fits all the descriptions.
Yeah, no, there's definitely things there that Troy covets in a player. If I'm a betting man, I'd put 10 cents on Whitmore or Walker being the pick. That's just how I feel. I could see them going Whitmore because I know will they take another front court guy? Is Jarris a 3 or 4? Is he small ball 5? I think there's just a lot to work out there. And again, you shouldn't factor in fit, but they're in a situation where you at least should be considered. So yeah, I'm interested to see, but I agree. I think Jarris would fit in well here.
Did you see he compared his versatility to LeBron, by the way?
He did, or somebody else did?
He did.
Good. He should. He should.
Yeah.
Nobody else should. He should, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Get drafted high.
Yeah, you got to
that's
think highly, baby. Shoot for the stars.
Yes, sir.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, that you got to like that self-confidence. If someone else did it though, to your point, I would have been like, I want names. But Jeff,
I'm gonna marry Mia Khalifa.
Hey, you can put it out there, James.
That's what
You
manifest.
never know.
Manifest.
And I'll go with Taylor Swift. She just broke up with her boyfriend, so I'll put
I
that.
saw
out
that.
And she can make a song about me. But James, I gotta ask you something too.
Yeah.
So discussing, Troy Weaver and his ability to get deals done, we saw this the last couple of years, him trading for reclamation projects. Can we what's the future hold with that? Are we done with trading for reclamation projects? Do you think it'll be strictly for guys that they know what they're bringing and no more taking chances? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think to that degree it is. I think it's easy to look at it now and like, okay, like that was a lot. But like in the moment, if you think about it, it's the right thing to do. This year, their season ended when Cade went down. So in hopes of trying to land Wembanyama, they were also trying to see if they can find some diamonds in the rough. So I think a lot of that is due to where they were as an organization. They had zero assets. So they're just trying to get lucky, try to find them in the rough, try to bank on their past talent evaluation that they could add another guy to the pipeline that the other teams would want. That's just, I think, a what's the word I'm looking for? I think that a lot of that was due to the circumstances. Now they want to try to win. I don't think that plays as big of a part going forward.
yeah, and with that, kind of like it's interesting because you look at kind of the margins of like kind of like the rest of the roster, and it's kind of like, we know James Wiseman was brought in at the deadline, and we know that he could potentially be our backup center this season. Beyond that, it's kind of hard to tell with guys like Marvin Bagley, with as well. It's a little difficult to see kind of what maybe his role is kind of going forward as well. And there's also a lot of players who had expiring contracts, like guys like Corey Joseph, Rodney McGruder, guys like Hamidou Diallo, even guys that they brought in, like RJ Hampton, who fits that description of guys who are, potentially diamonds in the rough.
Right.
What do you think as far as, like roster turnover this upcoming season, as far as, because even though Detroit isn't going to make a big, go get a star move, and even if they might not, besides Jeremy Grant or Cam Thompson or Cam, there's not going to be the huge name they add, but they certainly could change over their roster decently as well, right? What do you think the balance is there?
I don't know how much the roster changes. Like I think they add another guard. I think Kojo's gone.
Right.
Hami.
I think fans just you don't want to hear this because we like Kojo here, but I think fans just had a collective sigh of relief. I think a lot of people just wanted to hear that piece specifically.
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
We like Kojo here though. We like Kojo.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't want to even go down the rabbit hole. Shout out to Kojo.
Yeah.
One of my favorite guys I've covered as a person.
Yeah.
I do think they add a couple veterans, but I don't think it's going to be like as drastic as people think, because I just go back to kind of what I told you guys earlier, like what Troy says on record in front of cameras, like he's pretty open. And when asked about adding veterans, he's like, we have some. We have Alec Burks. We have Bojan.
Right.
Like, yeah, we're gonna probably gonna add another one or two, but like we like the veterans we have here. And so like I mean, if you look at it, how many guys are for sure coming back? We have Cade, Jaden, JD, Stewart, Livers, Wiseman, Killian, Bagley. Did I say Livers?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
I feel like I'm missing somebody.
Hamidou?
Well, that one I'm not sure. So
yeah,
there's 8 guys under contract. Oh, Burks.
Yep.
There's 9 guys under contract that unless there's a trade, obviously, which I could see one of Wiseman or Bagley possibly getting traded. I could see that happening. I wouldn't bet money on it. I could see it happening. There's 8 to 9 guys already under contract, right? So
Yep.
Add the 5th pick, probably add pick 31, and then round out the bench, or not round out the bench, but try to get an impact possible starter guy, and then a solid bench rotation guy, and then just maybe another. Oh, I'd imagine Rodney McGruder will be back. So yeah, I just don't think there's going to be like a significant turnover this year. I don't, to be honest with you. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, that
I'm
absolutely answers the question. Like
I just
maybe
ramble sometimes and forget what the question was, but I feel like I know where I don't know.
Oh, James, no, you're
right.
money. Don't
Good.
worry.
Good.
You are absolute money. Not a problem at all. Like I think that answers the question pretty well. Of like there could be a couple pieces here and there. We could see like maybe a couple new faces, but for the most part, this isn't going to be a whole brand new team next year. And I think an underrated aspect that people keep forgetting is adding Cade Cunningham back into your lineup is just going to inherently make you that much better. like that is like as much as that was a significant subtraction from our lineup last year, that is a significant addition to our lineup going into next year.
Yeah, I think I was maybe I told Dick this, but there's like irony in I don't know how many more games they would have won with Cade, but what the Spurs ended with 22.
Yeah,
Cade plays like say maybe that leads to 5 more wins. Like just the irony in like Cade not playing hurt their chances of getting Wemby, and if he played, like maybe their chances were better.
Yeah,
basketball gods are funny. It just never felt it never felt like it to me that like going into this that the juju was there for them to get number 1. I know a lot of fans hoped and prayed and all that stuff, but the year that they got Cade, it felt like they were getting number 1. Like I was calling it like a month out. It's like, oh, they had this young scrappy team that played hard. They didn't win a lot of games, but they were in every game. They did it the right way. They're going to get rewarded with the number 1 pick. And then boom, they get Cade. This year was like
everyone was making the joke that we were falling to 5. Everyone. We all saw it coming.
But I thought that was more so just Pistons fanning, you know what I mean? Like the worst case scenario is going to happen.
Yeah, you're being like pessimistic a little bit.
Yeah, it was yeah. I
thought too that the Spurs actually did tank for a lot of chunk of their season and they got number 1.
Yeah. People
forget
one
time they do, by the way. The best
people
tankers of all
forget
time.
that the Spurs everybody was talking about how many games in a row did the Pistons lose this year? Was it 20?
Yeah.
The Spurs the Spurs had one of those too, but people don't remember that. The Spurs lost like 21 straight this year.
Yep.
And still finished with 22 wins. Not that that's good, but you know what I mean? Like I think people forget how much losing that Spurs team did. I want to say around Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's because of how competitive they looked initially. And, and because of the fact that, it's coached by Pop. They have that chippiness to them. I think people always inherently are going to see him as a little more competitive for whatever reason, but that's a whole other here there. But, I do think, I did bring up Killian Hayes a second ago, and, he is someone that often is both simultaneously at the forefront and also at the background of a lot of conversations at the same time. Where he's someone that we think of so often because he was like that first pick, but at the same time,
is that where the fascination comes from? Like the continuous? Is it because he was the first pick of the rebuild?
It is.
I've always been kind of curious about that.
I think it's because
he might be the first miss.
It's Troy's first pick. It's technically the miss. I think it's because with especially Pistons fans, you focus so much on the draft picks you get wrong and how there was the star that was drafted behind him. So it's like with Killian, you think of it in the light of like the Luke Kennard, Donovan Mitchell thing, when in reality, like I say, okay, yes, that pick was a miss, but like you still got Isaiah Stewart, who, talk about a guy who can make a big jump this season.
Yeah, I always tell people the Killian one stings more if you don't end up with Cade and Jaden.
Right.
So I always am curious, like, and this is not to say Killian can't figure it out. I'm just saying as it stands now. people's kind of fascination with either calling him terrible or believing in him it's like it is often the top, like one of the most talked about things on the Pistons, and I'm just like, I don't know. There's like Cade and Jaden are the starting guards going forward. Like it's just very interesting to me how everyone's still kind of hung up on that, and I think Killian could be a good backup guard in this league. If he, at the end of the day, he's either got to be able to shoot from three or finish at the rim. Like both would be great for his career, but he's got to have it. He's got to be able to do at least one.
Yeah.
One of those things.
And if you would have drafted Tyrese Halliburton there instead, I mean, who's to say you would have won more games and fall out of number one pick next year to get Cade?
Right.
So.
Right. And there's that. You just never know, like situations. It's not like Halliburton was the 8th pick. Other teams passed on him.
Yep. And that was the COVID draft, man. I mean, like this, like with 2020, with the lack, like no in-person workouts, no in-person combine, right? Like there was just so much that was lost in translation in that draft process compared to others. Right?
Yeah.
There's that. Sorry to interrupt you. And I also just kind of am surprised that just getting to not know Tyrese, but hear him speak and how intelligent he is. I'm surprised that Detroit didn't. I know like they liked him and some loved him. But just like he just seems like a Weaver guy personality wise too. That was kind of the thing. Once thinking back on it, I was like, oh, I understand how he I would say exceeded expectations. I can understand that. He puts in the work and he's smart, very smart.
Yeah. The only thing I could think of is the whole ceiling thing with a lot of these players. He spent multiple years in college. Still a great player regardless. But I tend to think, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, and if you feel similar in a similar way, with Monty, now with Killian, now if Killian could do one of the two things you just mentioned at an NBA level, with everything else he brings, I mean, I don't see a scenario in which Monty doesn't love what Killian brings, like to the team, especially as the 7th man, 8th man. Like, am I wrong for that?
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, I think Killian is one of those two things away from like being a solidified NBA player. But those are two big ifs.
Right.
And there hasn't been much progress on either. This will be what, year 4 for him.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. If he can do one of those two things, that changes a lot for him. He's shown listen, I mean, we saw what he looks like with what he looked like with an average NBA 3 ball. He looked like a NBA player. He looked like an NBA guard during that stretch. Yeah. Then the shot stopped falling. And he struggled a little bit down the stretch. So he's got to, I understand that there's more of the game than scoring, but you got to be able to do one of those two things. You have to. Like you can talk yourself around it, and great pass. He found the angle. He found the weak side. Great defender. All that stuff's cool. But like, you either have to put the ball in the basket from 3 or at the line or at the hoop or get to the line. He has to do one of those two.
I think Killian is like a shining example of why there's such of like what the differences are between the 0.01% and the 0.001% when you talk about like the best basketball players in the world. Because when you talk about Killian, it's like there's nothing physically that he is lacking as far as like what it takes to be a great basketball player, like athleticism wise, like wingspan wise, like he has everything as far as like the tool set to be like a solid NBA player. To me, like a lot of it just comes down to what's in here, like the mental aspect of when Killian was confident, when he was making decisions, when he felt like his shot was reliable and that he could go to it. That was the best Killian's ever looked by far. But like when there were those moments where, the confidence was wavering, or, when he went to the Paris game and there was that clear pressure of being home and playing at home, right? Like it just, I think we've seen with guys like over the last couple of years with like the likes of Ben Simmons and, other players in the league that have had, struggles with like the mental aspect of the game. It seems like especially 3-4 years into your career, it seems like those are just really difficult hurdles to climb. And it's like, yes, if, again, I still believe Killian can be an awesome backup point guard for this team in the future. But again, it's like, I think to that point, it's like, I think those are the most difficult hurdles to jump. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, believing you can do it is a big one.
Yeah.
Seeing yourself do it, that was kind of the surprise to me about what the second half of his season looked like, because I always thought he kind of just needed a stretch like he had to, like, okay, like I can do this. And so that's why it was like surprising to me to see him kind of regress a little bit from there. But yeah, no, I get exactly what you're saying. I just think, yeah, I don't know how else to say it at this point other than he's got to do one of those two things to stick around in Detroit at least.
Yeah. Yeah. He can do a lot of different things, but it just comes back to, can you put the ball in the basket or not?
Yeah. And I'm not saying that to say like Killian needs to be out there bucket getting and bucket searching, but as somebody who's, he's at his, to maximize Killian, he needs the ball in his hands to make, whether or not you can have the argument would you rather maximize Killian or player X, whatever. Killian at his best, to get the best out of Killian, he has to have the ball in his hands. The things he does well usually come with him running a pick and roll and all that stuff. So when you have the ball that much, you got to be able to get a bucket. You just even if that's your plan C, you just got to be able to get one.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it comes down to. I'm not saying Killian needs to average 15 points a game. I'm just saying if things get tight and he has the ball, can he go get you a bucket? And I think can when he plays off another guard, can he knock down wide open spot up threes? So like that's just all it comes down to for me.
Yeah, for sure. Jeff, you got one last question for our boy James?
No, you guys nailed it. I was going to bring up Killian, but I think he was pretty thorough with what he expects. So
got a fun one to close. We're very much a Pistons podcast, but we're also an NBA podcast. I guess what's your finals prediction, and how many games will the winner have to? How many finals games will the deciding game be? Will it be a 6-game series, 7-game series? What are you thinking?
My prediction going in was Nuggets in 5. I gave the Heat 1 out of respect for Jimmy Butler.
Give him 2 now. What are you giving?
No, I'm sticking with it. I'm sticking with Nuggets in 5. I just think they're the superior basketball team, and I think a loss. They needed a loss.
I do too.
I think they needed a loss. Like they need to know, and knowing Mike Malone and being around him, like he's gonna put fear into them. Like it ain't. No, we haven't been here, and this organization hasn't been here. You may never get here again. And I just think at the end of the day, when they're locked in, that they're just way more talented than Miami. I think they win in 5. I don't think it goes 7. I'll say that. I don't think it goes 7.
I don't think I think there's few coaches I love listening to more than Mike Malone.
I love Mike Malone
because he is just always angry about something.
Yeah.
And it just makes me so happy.
And he's funny too.
That was kind of Larry Brown's personality when he won the championship in 2004 with us. Kind of that always angry about one play, never satisfied, always trying to win games. And
that's psycho coach. That's you meet any coach in this league, they're all like that. Like Stan Van Gundy, you couldn't.
Please tell us one Stan Van Gundy story.
Oh my gosh.
What's a good Stan Van Gundy story? I mean, I only covered him for a season, but I got a few. What do you want me to depict about Stan in this? Like how intense he was, how dumb he made me look once,
that one.
How about all the above? We got time.
Yeah.
All right.
How did he make you look dumb?
Well, it was dumb, but it was bad on my part. So Pistons trade for, I might have told the story on a pod before, but so if you've heard this before, I apologize. Pistons trade for Blake. Next day at practice, like every media in the state is at practice, right?
Yep.
And it's a crowd. I'm like toward the back, and it's just everyone's huddled around Stan, and it's just whatever. Like these people don't come every day like I do. I'll just let them get their questions off. And mind you, it's my first year on the beat. All the Blake questions go. Everybody asks everyone. I'm like, all right, I got to ask something. So if you remember, they also acquired Willie Reed in the trade.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And the Pistons were a terrible rebounding team at this point.
I
even
remember
with Andre.
watching this.
Like everybody except Andre was the only one rebounding. It was like a big emphasis of Stan's. Like we have to rebound outside of Andre. So like me, and I live by this now. Like if I don't have a good question, like I just want to ask a question. I don't need to hear myself talk. I remember I asked Stan, I was like, Stan, you've talked a lot about the rebounding outside of Andre. Do you think Willie Green or Willie Reed will help with that? He looked at me and said, yep. 2 days later, Willie Reed was traded to wherever Willie Reed was traded to. That was good.
I didn't think that was dumb though at the time though, James, because like people don't remember. Like I'm the type of sicko that remembers this because no one else would remember this. But yeah. Willie Reed was a part of the organization before that. He was a part of the drive briefly.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Like Willie Reed was actually I actually kind of thought he could have played some form of role too. So I was surprised when they traded him. I didn't think it was a stupid question.
Yeah, but obviously, if I was as tapped in then as I am now, like maybe I would have known that Willie was on the way out, right? But yeah, that was funny. I mean, I got so many.
I got to know about the intensity though. Maybe that's the one other one. I just got to know how intense Stan.
So I wasn't on the beat for this, but it happened the year before, and Rod and them told me, sir, you can actually find the YouTube video. On if you Google Stan Van Gundy team meeting my ass, you can find this. Can you play audio?
Oh yeah.
So the Pistons lost a game the day before, and they had a team meeting. So they lose this game tonight, or they lose this game that night. And Rod, hunting for a story or whatever headline, asks something with the team meeting, and Stan goes. You can, if you want to play the audio, it'd be funnier if you hear it from Stan.
100%.
Stan, what's most concerning about what happened out there?
That we got crushed at both ends.
This was normal Stan after.
Yeah, that's a Stan answer.
But coming off a team meeting and all of the
team meeting my ass. That stuff's, like I said before, that stuff means nothing. It's what you do on the court. Talking's easy.
That was Stan. Yeah, like
that's gotta
nice
be
guy, great guy, but you had to give him after games. He was just, his blood pressure, his head's bobbing, like he had his ticks. He eating or losing really ate him up. Really did.
That was a little bit of the old head Stan coming out there with the team meeting comment. That's a little bit of that old head coming out.
That was good. And then we were in Charlotte once. This is the last story. I'm sorry, Troy, did you have something? Did I cut you off?
No. Okay. That was it.
So we were just like, it was pregame, and Stan was phenomenal at, like, you ask him his opinion on something, like it doesn't have to be Pistons related, anything, and he would just talk and have great insight.
Yep.
And I don't remember how this happened, but we were doing his pregame press conference, and the topic came up of the NCAA. And he wanted to spend his entire 10, 15 minutes just calling the NCAA racist, and how it's ridiculous that baseball players and golfers who are made up of predominantly Caucasian athletes can go pro out of high school, but basketball and football players have to go to college and do all this stuff. But it is the fact that he spent 15 minutes before a game calling the NCAA racist on record is just, not everybody's doing that, right? And you guys know he's spoken out a lot. Just a really interesting guy. Between him and Dwayne, man, I've been blessed. Those are two guys that if you were just like go up to a bar by yourself and they're sitting there, you would drink until you pass out just listening to them talk. Just two really good dudes.
And you would have two wildly different conversations, but both would be profound in their own way. 100%.
Yes. Dwayne can be a little.
Dwayne's not as dry as he comes off. He can be funny, it feels like.
Dwayne's good. Dwayne knows when the camera's on. I'll say that. Dwayne is funnier than I think people know and a little more edgy than people know, like in a good way, not like he'll crack jokes. I think people think he doesn't curse, like Dwayne curses.
Right.
He's just he's old school coach. He's very professional, very, very professional.
I
and
read his
he
lips
knows,
on TV. I know he curses. I can see that.
I still think there's part of me, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but when him and Luka got into it in Dallas this year, I'm just like part of me that thinks he called him a fat F word, but I that's just my lip reading. I didn't ask him if that was true. I need to ask him, but yeah, you'll catch Dwayne every now and then show that edge.
I love that. That is so awesome. But James, dude, seriously, I can't thank you enough again for taking the time, during such such a busy time for you. And, I tell you all the time, you're one of my favorite people in the league, but one of my favorite people in general, man. Thanks so much for coming on and being on the pod. And yeah, man, where can people find your work and where can people follow you?
Yeah. You can go to the Athletic Pistons tab. If you're not subscribed, I'm sure there's like a deal. I think you can get a subscription for like $2 a month. I'm on Twitter at JL Edwards III. Yeah, Monty press conference next week, draft in 2 weeks, free agency and summer league after that. So yeah, it's going to be about a month of stuff to do, and then I will relinquish to the Bat Cave until October, and never to be heard from until, well, I guess October 1st is when camp starts. So from mid-July till start of October, I will not be heard. But until then, there will be content for you.
That's awesome, man. You got any trips planned or any fun off-season festivities going on, or just gonna lay low?
I may go to Amsterdam.
Ooh.
Still debating Amsterdam or somewhere else, but I'm gonna go. Yeah, I went to Paris this year, so like my miles are like juiced right now.
Oh yeah. That's right.
So I have like 150,000 flyer miles that need to be used. So why not on a big trip?
Heck yeah, absolutely, man.
Figure it out. Maybe I'll just fly to Grand Rapids.
Hey, anytime, man.
Get a wet burrito. Home of the wet burrito.
James, you and me, we could hit up the town. It would be grand.
I'll be there. 5-minute flight. I'll be there.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it, man.
Is the wet burrito a real thing? Is that real?
You've never heard of a wet burrito?
Come on, dude. You're
okay.
That's
known for wet burrito. Ben Wallace eat it, didn't we, Sean? We got to see Ben Wallace eat a wet burrito.
So Troy and I went to college together here in Grand Rapids, and we were our college is literally right around the corner from the corner bar.
Yeah.
And
that's the place that supposedly invented the wet burrito, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Their claim to fame,
Yep, we met Ben Wallace there back in like 2017 because like it was something in conjunction with the drive. They did some form of meet and greet there, and so I got to meet Ben Wallace after eating a wet burrito. It's awesome.
It's great.
Yeah,
that's a memorable story.
Oh,
that's a memorable statement. What he just
that's what I was trying to say. Yeah. Hey yo.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, yo, that's hilarious. Yeah, I need to get out to the corner bar. My buddy / coworker Max Boltman covers the Red Wings for the Athletic, is from Grand Rapids, and he was the first person to tell me that this place claims they are the home of the wet burrito, which I just didn't assume. Oh, look at that.
Yep.
You had
look a little young deck? Sean.
You had the jersey on deck?
Oh yeah, man. He signed it and everything. Got it in the closet.
That's awesome.
It's a nice little trio there.
Oh yeah, 100%.
New big three.
But yeah, man, James, at some point I'll have to get out and see you in Detroit at some point too. But be sure, I know people already know you, so be sure your people are listening to the Bun and Cardigan podcast, following.
Oh yeah, I didn't plug that. Sorry, Nick.
Oh, hey,
listen to our podcast too.
Hey, don't worry. I that's what I'm here for. Go. It's a great pod. It really is. Listening to you guys break down how Nick bullies children in video games is one of the funniest things I heard in a minute. But
that guy, he needs help. But thank you.
Anyway, be sure you follow my guys Jeff and Troy as well. Troy at Troy3044, Jeff at Jeff I Afraid. You can even follow myself at Sean Halfcourt. But that is going to do it for today, folks. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time from Halfcourt. Make sure you're subscribed.